I'm Matt, owner of Tye-Dyed Iguana. Today I'm going to tell you how you can pick out the proper heat lamp for your reptile. Not all heat lamps are created equal, and oftentimes people focus too much on the wattage rather than the type of light bulb. The style of the light bulb is more important than the wattage of light bulb, and it comes heavily into play when you're choosing the proper bulb for your animal. So let's look at some of the different heat lamps that are available on the market. I want to start first with what I like to call a tight beam basking bulb. This is the Reptile basking lamp by Zoomed. And when I say it's a tight beam basking bulb, what we want to look at is the way the bulb is designed. So when we look at the light bulb right here, what you're going to notice is a silver lining inside the bulb, and it kind of comes over this bend right here. That is the reflector for the light and the heat. So it comes around this bend and it creates a very tight, hot beam of light. This is where it gets the name tight beam basking. These bulbs are perfect for penetrating large depths of space. They're also perfect for putting a hot spot on the ground. So an animal like a bearded dragon, for instance, would often use this style bulb to heat it. It's going to take the heat and it's going to push it straight down to the ground for a very large span of space. So tight beam basking bulbs are the bulb that you want to use if you want your hot spot on the ground. Regardless of desert or tropical, if you need a hot spot on the ground, a tight beam is the way to go. We'll leave that out for a little bit of reference. Next, we have what I like to call a flood bulb. Now, keep in mind as we're looking at this, different brands will name their bulbs differently. So this is a bulb by Zilla. They call it an incandescent spot, but it's really not a spot lamp. And we can tell by looking at the reflector. So notice here the reflector does not come all the way around the edge. Let's just look at the two side by side. So this reflector basically stops right at that halfway point. So when we look at the tight beam where it's going to push that heat in a straight beam, this flood style lamp, it's going to kind of cone out a little bit wider. These bulbs are perfect if your hot spot needs to be in a tree. So if you're trying to get that hot spot on the ground, use the tight beam to push the heat down to the ground. If you want the hot spot to penetrate about halfway down the tank, this is where the flood style bulb comes into play. So again, just look at that reflector right there and see where it ends, and it'll give you that wider cone of heat. Next, I want to look at an incandescent style bulb. We're going to use Zoomed's Day Blue bulb. Now on the back of the box, they've got a really cool diagram that perfectly explains this bulb. The incandescent bulb has no reflector, and therefore the heat radiates out in all directions. This is a non-directional heat lamp. So this type of bulb is generally going to be used when you just need to create ambient warmth in the tank. It's not going to put a hot spot on the ground. It's also not going to put a hot spot in a tree. It's going to basically warm the air immediately around that bulb. This is something that you'll typically use for like a crested gecko that needs a little bit of heat, or maybe some sort of amphibian. So anything where you need non-directional heat, in other words, you're not really looking for a specific hot spot, that's where you'd use something like this. So then lastly, we've got the infrared style bulbs. Now this is where things get a little bit interesting. So with this infrared style bulb, this is Zoomed's infrared heat lamp. This is going to be kind of hard to see, but the reflector stops in the same place as the flood bulb. I don't know if you can make that out. However, due to the nature of the infrared bulb, they are very efficient at pushing the heat to the ground. So I found from our experience, this infrared bulb pushes the heat in the same manner as a tight beam basking bulb. So if you need a hot spot on the ground in an infrared style lamp, you'll use the infrared basking bulb. Just don't mistake this with the flood lamp. This will be used for typically like a nighttime heat source for a bearded dragon, or a 24-hour heat source for a nocturnal animal such as a ball python or a leopard gecko. So when you need that hot spot on the ground, any sort of infrared spot lamp will work. Now the infrared bulbs also come in the incandescent style bulb. Again, this is a blue one, but you can get these red bulbs in this style. So if you just need some sort of nighttime ambient heat source and you want to use the red, you can get this style bulb. Zoomed also makes a moonlight bulb, which puts out a very deep purple light, almost like a black light. When you run it during the day, you can virtually see no visible light coming out, but at nighttime it gives you that nice soft glow. So that's kind of the basic gist of the different layouts for the heat bulbs. A couple other heat sources worth noting. There's the mercury vapor bulb, which is an all-in-one bulb. You can see one of our videos where we talk about UVB and this gets explained. But from a heat perspective, this is worth noting because it's very much a flood style bulb. This is Exoterra's Solar Glow, but notice where the reflector stops. So this is a 160 watt bulb. On a 40 breeder tank for a bearded dragon, a 100 watt basking bulb will give you a 95 degree heat spot. A 160 watt mercury vapor will give you a 95 degree hot spot. And that just goes to show the difference between the efficiency of that tight beam reflector versus that wide beam reflector. Now, granted, this is a totally different bulb. We're doing UVB as well, so don't look at it as an inefficient bulb, but just understand that a lot of your mercury vapors are not a tight beam bulb. So with these, you're typically going to have a much higher wattage. They make these in 100 watt, but that 100 watt version of this is not the same heat output as a 100 watt version of this. So you'll notice a little bit of a disparity there. And then lastly, we have the ceramic heat emitters. These can be a little confusing if you're not familiar with them. They are flat on the bottom. These will operate in the same manner as a basking bulb. So a 100 watt tight beam basking and a 100 watt ceramic heat emitter will both give you a 95 degree hot spot at the bottom of a 40 breeder, assuming an average room temperature of about 74 degrees. So that is your crash course on Reptile heating. Once you've chosen the style bulb you'll need, at that point, then you can start looking at the wattage.